Welcome to the Basketball Society podcast. I am your host, Martin Soaries, and I'm here to tap in with you on topics and trends across the basketball multiverse. So I'm excited to have you here for this episode. Please subscribe wherever you're listening from, and also go to the YouTube channel for more video episodes and even more content from Basketball Society. Thank you so much for being part of the Basketball Society podcast family. Stay tapped in. I really just want to focus on Phoenix this episode. I want to talk about the Phoenix Suns. I want to talk about this trade, Kevin Durant, what it means, what it could mean, how it affects Devin Booker, Chris Paul. I just want to jump into this, and I want to start with the overarching theme of this whole thing. The conversation that always comes up, is this a super team? Does this make Phoenix a super team? You're only going to call this a super team based on the kind of respect you have for Chris Paul and or DeAndre Ayton. Today's version of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton. I mean, that's a great four. That's a great four. It's made great mostly by the two in the middle. Positionally, it's awesome too. Let me say that. Positionally, I mean, it just fits beautifully. But those four today, the Phoenix four against the Golden State four, when Kevin Durant said he was going to Golden State, you tell me, were you feeling the same way, the same kind of nerves that you felt when you heard he was going to Phoenix? Was it really the same? I think it was a little similar, but it wasn't. No, it wasn't the same. When KD went to Golden State, it was just like LeBron going to Miami. It was, I mean, you knew that was going to lead to a title. Steph, Clay, KD in their primes and Draymond, as the fourth with Draymond is different than Chris Paul, Devin Booker, KD. Chris Paul, Devin Booker, KD is fire. Like, I don't even know. Would you say their big three is Chris Paul, Devin Booker, KD, or Devin Booker, KD, DeAndre Ayton? Is that their big three, or do we just go with the big four? It's about how you feel about Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton. I don't think either of them are like star talents in the league right now to say, oh, they've got a big three of 3 stars. Like, it's not Wade, LeBron, Bosh. It's not Steph, Clay, KD. I don't even know if every team that has a big three is considered a super team. Like, the Pelicans have a big three, McCollum, Ingram, and Zion. That's a big three. No one's calling them a super team. Chris Paul is a Hall of Fame point guard, right? We should all know and respect. We know what Chris Paul does and brings to the table. Top tier point guard. He's not top 5 at his position right now. Probably top 10, but he's not a top 5 talent at his position right now. And that's the kind of talent that I was saying, you should go after to try to pair with Devin Booker, because Chris Paul's not getting any younger. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what we label them, super team or not. Like, we just want to see them play and see what's going to happen and see how it plays out. But I just, I wanted to throw my 2 cents in, because I don't think it's definitive that it's a super team. I just don't know. Chris Paul's Hall of Fame, but he's not in his prime. DeAndre Ayton's kind of his prime, but we don't know if he's, who knows if he'll be a Hall of Fame player or anything like that. Super team, I think, is just a different realm. Miami, LeBron, KD, Golden State, those felt like super teams. This just feels like a really, really good team, potentially great, potentially super. All right, so I feel like I'm really excited for Devin Booker. I've kind of made this kind of side by side, I don't want to say comparison, but just looking at Devin Booker and Klay Thompson as players. Klay Thompson, obviously known as a shooter, right? As one of the best shooters. Devin Booker, more so known as one of the best scorers, right? Who's also, but one of the best facets of Devin Booker's scoring is his shooting. Everything from his form to his footwork to his elevation, his mechanics. Devin Booker is a really, really good shooter. He's a really good shooter and shot maker. And that when KD went to Golden State, that was just not being a Golden State fan or like a KD fan in particular, but just the main thing that I was excited to see was just the shooting. I love the idea of someone as talented as Devin Booker getting to play with someone who's even better than him in Kevin Durant, who has won, who is just, a freak of nature in his own right, just in terms of his size and his versatility. Like, Kevin Durant can change life for Devin Booker. Not unlike how Kyrie Irving can change life for Luka Doncic. I mean, when you bring in another star, another guy who is on your level or better, it takes adapting, and you got to learn certain things. You got to get used to it, but that can change your life. Life can become just so much easier. Suddenly the defenses don't seem as as focused on you, right? Suddenly you get a few more open shots here and there. Things start to open up a little bit more. LeBron, after years in Cleveland, LeBron wanted to play with better players. He wanted to team with, not even just, those were his friends, like those literally his friends and better players and some of the best players in the league. That gives me my best chance to win championships. I don't know why people expect players to want to go somewhere where I'll be the centerpiece and I'll lead the team, and then maybe we'll attract people, and that's not how it's been working in the NBA for the last over a decade now. But on the last point, going to Chris Paul represents kind of like the ultimate discipline, like disciplinarian point guard out there. Structure, right? Experience. He's a Hall of Fame point guard. And while he's not in his prime, he can still take over games, and he's still one of the ultimate players at his position. And Chris Paul is going to make life easier for Kevin Durant. Now, I will say this: there has been, if you know what I'm getting at, if you know where I'm going with this, there has been kind of a history of people not really liking playing with Chris Paul. Blake Griffin, James Harden, not to say it's like a universal thing or anything, but what I will say is that I know that Chris Paul pushes people's buttons. I think he really gets on his teammates. I think he's that kind of guy. The way he plays too, it's very physical. It's very, it's talking, it's pointing, it's bumping into people. Like, Chris Paul is just, he can be kind of controversial. I do wonder how that will, what will happen with that, with Kevin Durant on that side of things. But just strictly basketball wise, that thing can be beautiful. Again, this is why KD, this might be the closest, this is probably the closest thing in terms of like basketball style and culture that KD could get outside of Golden State. And the way they play, they do a lot of pin downs, they do a lot of motion act. They do the kind of stuff that KD can fit right into. I do see the Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, action working really well. Now they need all of them, and that's part of why I don't think it's really like a super team. Because if one goes, like if Draymond goes down, you still have Steph, Clay, KD. If Clay goes down, you still have Steph and KD and Draymond, right? If Devin Booker goes down, it's Chris Paul and KD and DeAndre Ayton. That's still good. That's still really good. But you need Booker. If KD goes down, you're back to where you're back to regular old Phoenix, right? Like, with one star, a Hall of Fame point guard, and a good big. Like, that's worst case scenario, of course. But like with the Warriors, again, if KD went down for the Warriors and they still had Steph, Clay, Draymond, and they're back to where they were before, well, before they had KD, they won 73. So that's what makes it different than this situation in Phoenix. Trust me, it's different. The person who they can afford to lose the most is Chris Paul. And Chris Paul is pretty injury prone. Sometimes he doesn't, last all the way 100% through the playoffs physically. KD could be a real lifeline for him and for them if Chris Paul were to miss a game or two, right? He was hurt, I think, in the finals when they were going up against Giannis. A hurt Chris Paul is definitely not, you got to be ready for Giannis, right? You can't be hurt or dinged up, or you got to be ready. Look, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton without Chris Paul. That could be a big three. If DeAndre Ayton is being the big that some people seem to think he is, that could be a big three. right there on its own without Chris Paul. If Chris Paul is a little dinged up or not 100% or even not playing well, you've got an extra lifeline. It doesn't all go onto Devin Booker's shoulders. Chris Paul needed this. Devin Booker needed this. It looks like KD definitely needed this after all the stuff that went down in Brooklyn. But yeah, this is the closest culture that he could get to Golden State, but it's not the same. This isn't a super duper team. It isn't even an automatic super team, in my opinion. It can be super. It can be really good. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. Chris Paul doesn't have, forever. This is the end of his career. So for him to have a chance to get to the finals and get one at that stage of his career, that was such an opportunity. And he just got a new opportunity to get back now. Getting Kevin Durant. I've seen a lot of people bringing back up the quote from Chris Paul. I think it was after they had lost the finals to Milwaukee, but just being asked about what the experience was like, Chris Paul said, like, he's addicted to being in the finals now. Like, he just has to get back. He's addicted to it. And people were making all kinds of jokes and memes about that, implying that it doesn't look like you're going to be getting back. So now Chris Paul has another shot, another lifeline in the form of Kevin Durant to get back to the NBA Finals. I'm Martin Soaries. I appreciate you listening to this episode. Please subscribe wherever you're listening from. Stay tapped in. I'll see you guys next time.